Welcome to Getcha Rocks Off with Mick Wall, the world's leading rock and metal writer. Each fortnight, Mick will unpack rock and roll stories. Stories that you probably won't find in print. So pour yourself a Jack and Coke and get ready to get your rocks off. Hey everyone, before we get into today's episode, you might notice that this episode abruptly ends at around the 60-minute mark. Now, there is a reason for that, but we will let Mick and John fill us in the next episode of Getcha Rocks Off.
Hello. 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 I'm speaking in this voice because... Fuck sake. Shut up!
They're here.
They're here. Coco has brought some... We can't... I'm going to have to stop this. Hello. And welcome to another fine edition of Get Your Rocks Off.
Get your rocks off.
Get your rocks off. With me, Mick Wall, and that bloke over there.
Me, John Houghton.
That's right. Now, this week, this time, we're going to be talking about something truly joyous.
Because
something
it's the spirit.
Uplifting.
It's just before Christmas as we record this.
It is,
so
but this will be middle of January.
Well, I realise that, but I'm just... I do understand that. But I'm just saying, just trying to... There'll be joy in our voices for two reasons. Reason A is that it's going to be Christmas soon.
Yeah, always fills me with joy.
It fills me with such joy.
Joy, yeah.
Joy. And you know, and the fact the pandemic has said we can't get together.
Yeah. Well, that does fill me with joy. Yeah, I'm a very strong advocate for no bubbles at Christmas.
Yeah.
Do not come to my fucking house just because there's some tenuous blood link.
Exactly.
Okay?
That gate out there that I couldn't get through this morning.
The barrier to the farm.
As it's called, which needs an electronic opening. I drew up to the barrier this morning ready to record the podcast, and I usually have to make a phone call when I arrive at the barrier to, because obviously the house is way. You imagine way in the rolling Oxfordshire countryside.
That's right.
There's a little dot on the horizon, which is the house. So I call the house.
Just a curl of
I call the house to be admitted to do the podcast. And so I call the house, there's no reply. I wait a few minutes. The main house. I call the house again, there's no reply. I see the front door open. Out walks Mick Wall, has a look around. I'm sure he does see me at the barrier, and he just runs back inside. He just ran back inside and shut the door.
Well, I thought you might be some sort of tenuous relative come to spread Christmas joy. So clearly that's unacceptable.
Yeah. So that didn't. So we're now through the barrier.
We're through the barrier. We're in the room.
Reason one that we're joyous is it's Christmas. Reason B is today's subject,
which is the most joyous, popular form of rock music
of all rock music.
Yeah. Grunge.
Grunge.
You can tell by its wonderful nom de
wonderful
plume.
Name that it's going to be amazing. It's
grunge.
Full of chicks and
dead chicks.
Dead chicks.
Heroin
killed
addicted
by
chicks.
Drugs.
Yeah, killed by drugs.
Dead blokes killed by drugs and doom and.
So not much sex.
Yeah. No.
Some rock and roll, but mainly drugs.
A lot of drugs.
Yeah, but while we're on that point, that word grunge, which so aptly describes the uplifting sound
of the
down-tuned Kim, what was his name in Soundgarden? Kim Thaler.
Research. And in a minute we will come to some... There's a new section of the pod called Corrections and Clarifications.
Okay,
we'll come to that in a minute.
We'll come to that in a minute. But first to say, look...
Kim Thale, yes. It's who you're groping for.
Yeah, pretending that I didn't know the name of. Melodic rock fans, hair metal fans, chill out.
Chill the fuck out.
Chill the fuck out. Don't tune off because trust me, this is one discussion about grunge you're going to like.
You're going to like, because we're not going to talk about grunge, basically.
Really, we're not, no. But what I will say is... I don't know what I was going to say. Should we do corrections?
We should, because I believe you had a comment which you emailed to me or sent to me, which was very lovely from people who'd listened to the pod and they enjoyed it.
Very much enjoyed the friendly ambience.
But one of them said, "I'm not sure they get everything right." It was along those lines.
Yeah, I had a couple of comments from someone saying, "Very cool podcast." Not so much on the research.
Yeah, that's right.
What the fuck?
And yet, how often do we talk about research? All the time.
All that we talk about all the time on the pod.
The research.
The research is in my heart.
The research that we've done. Our lives have been the research.
Exactly.
Because we were there. That's why we do this podcast, because we were there.
Why do you think we can't remember everything? Because we were there.
And where we were for one of the last episodes, I'm not quite sure in which order these episodes are going to go out. So it probably wasn't the last episode, but the last episode but one maybe, which was about the Monsters of Rock, the Donington Monsters of Rock. You may have listened to it. It was a good one.
That was about 3 podcasts.
It was about 3 podcasts, but it was a good podcast. I mean, it was all about what it was like to be at Donington.
Well, I was good.
Mick was fantastic. And Mick told a story that at his, was it the first Donington you went to, I think you said, where you went with Steve Jewell, a.k.a. Crusher, and Kelly Pike in the Green Machine, which was Crusher Jewell's car, in sort of true Hunter S. Thompson style, departed from Bermondsey in the morning, arrived at Donington. You were contracted to provide 2 reviews.
2 intricately woven, enlightening, insightful, intelligent, well-researched.
Well-researched. The first one you said was of Y&T. The second one was of Gary Moore, both of whom were playing at the Monsters of Rock. He got that right. Right. The story entailed the fact that for the first act he was reviewing, Y&T, he was still on the motorway.
No. I was face down on the ground.
Okay.
Now, we had arrived,
right,
but by then I couldn't walk. So I'd actually crawled on my hands and knees from the car into the much-needed sanctuary of the VIP area.
That's right, the VIP area.
Where I was.
Whereupon he took out his notebook.
That's right.
Well, anyway, let's not rehash it.
No,
let's
not another
rehash
comment. The one
it.
that said John always interrupts you.
Oh, yeah.
Case in point. There's a review on Spotify. I never read reviews. I came across this one by accident, like Trump coming across a Bill Maher episode by accident. And it said, a very good podcast. It's just spoiled because John keeps interrupting when Mick's about to say something.
But that's because what you can't see is he's just about to nod off. And I think, oh, Christ, I better get in here. Otherwise, it's just going to be dead air.
So I'm face down on the ground and someone says, Y&T, aren't you supposed to be reviewing them? To which I immediately replied... If you listen carefully, you can hear Coco joining in on that.
Yeah, he likes that.
So anyway, please continue, John.
A listener,
regular
listener. All our listeners are regular listeners. Podders, are they called podders or whatever? I don't even know what they're called. Pod followers, podsters. I don't know. What do you call people who listen to podcasts? I don't know, whatever. Listeners.
The people that listen to this podcast are clearly... the 1% elite listeners
and one of those
in the world.
discerning men is Tim McMillan, who's a great man, a great metal fan, and somewhat of an archivist. If you ever need a sort of back issue of Kerrang or Sounds or something like that, Tim's one of the men you can go to because in his sad way, he's got like a shed full of old magazines.
Wow.
Lo and behold, I get in after this episode has been broadcast to be sent a message by Tim saying, thought you'd like to see the review of Donington that day. Thought you'd like to read it.
So go on.
I got it out and the first band on that, well, no, actually, the first band did, because there's sort of one page. Tim sent one page. I think there
was more than one page.
There was more. It begun on a previous page. So the page begins with sort of the last paragraph of a Derek Oliver review.
Thank God,
God knows who that is. Yeah. All I can say is they played a song called "Looks That Kill." Oh no, it was Motley Crue. It's Motley Crue who
God knows who they are. All I know is they played a song called Looks That Kill.
It was
no clue there. No clue there at all.
So Motley Crue have played before the next band. Now, the next band on at Donington, do you know who it was that day?
Y&T?
No, it was Accept. Accept. And who reviewed Accept that day?
No clue.
It was Mick Wall.
No.
Mick Wall
really?
reviewed Accept that day. No.
You mean I reviewed Accept thinking I was reviewing Y&T?
Do you not recall these words? Staggering like a dog with 3 legs, suffering from a severe case of the rabies shakes, me and Accept bumped heads.
No, what a
Do you
great...
not remember? It was a good opening.
That's not bad, is it?
Considering you were on your hands and knees and thought you were watching Y&T. That's tremendous.
I was actually face down. I just like to emphasise that because...
So you did see Accept. The next band on that day were...
Y&T? And did I review them?
No, you didn't know. Mark Putterford reviewed Y&T.
Do you know, that brings back a weird memory. I think maybe I was supposed to review Y&T, but forgot. And then later in the day, Putterford goes, weren't you supposed to review Y&T? I went, maybe. Was I? I said, oh. He goes, you were face down. I went, I know. I said, did you see them? And he went, yeah. I said, well, why don't you do it then? Yeah. I bet he didn't review any other band that day, did he?
Well, I'm trying to see it on here because the next band on after the
Gary
tremendous set by Y&T was Gary Moore, who was reviewed by
me,
Mick Wall.
Oh,
correct.
Okay. Excellent.
Love dressed
Gary.
in a natty red tracksuit, Gary Moore paraded his talents. You'd obviously given up by that point.
Yeah, I'm surprised I didn't mention floorboard bass,
you really
pummeling drums and kamikaze guitar.
The review concludes, good rockin' though, Gazza, good rockin'. That's the review of a man who did not see who did not see the set.
No, was present. But not correct.
No, that's right. You're right. I don't think Putterford did chime in again that day because the next act on...
No, I do remember clearly saying to someone, can you do it?
Yeah, the next act on was Ozzy Osbourne, which Del Boy did again.
A highly appropriate choice.
He obviously saw that. Van Halen were next after that, and Dave Dixon did Van Halen.
Oh, and who did the headliners?
Headliners, which were AC/DC, was... I'm trying to see the bonnet. It was Dave Dixon again. So Dave was obviously the man that day, not Mick Wall.
No, I concede that there may have been
the odd inaccuracy.
Some
both in the report itself and in the memory of the day.
There may have been some slightly fuzzy detail in the actuality. In the actuality, but I think you'll find the spirit of Donington was very much
within the
words.
Rabid head shakes or whatever. That was good.
Love that.
That was really good. Yeah, nick that. Use that again.
Yeah.
No
so anyway,
so correction's over. If you hear anything else that's wrong, drop us a line.
Yeah,
don't drop us a line.
I'm going to drop you a line right now. Yeah.
Well, really
do you remember when you were going on and on and on about how Leopard were bottled off at Donington?
I don't remember that.
And I said to you, I said to you,
Donington, who cares?
I said, I think it was Reading, and you went, no, it was definitely Donington.
You're right.
Turns out a listener, and whenever a listener sends a comment, I just know they know more than we do.
Yeah, of course they do.
A listener pointed out that was not the actuality.
No.
The actuality, which you had clearly avoided for reasons unknown, was more that...
It was like that I forgot, probably.
Yes, that's definitely one technical term for it in podcasting.
Because you know what? It came back to me because I could be... I'm probably going to be completely...
Like a bad dream.
I'm probably going to be completely wrong again here, but wasn't Donington Rick Allen's first gig after he made his comeback with after his accident? Because after we'd had that discussion, I'm sure I remembered there was a great documentary on Def Leppard at one point, and when Rick had lost his arm and he was making his comeback, they had the adapted kit, and it was this terrific bit of engineering at the time because obviously it was way ahead of synths and all that kind of stuff. So they adapted this kit that could enable him to trigger various sounds, and all really interesting stuff. And what they did was they lined up a couple of low-key shows for him to make his comeback. And they had, I think the guy's name is Jeff Rich, who was the drummer in Status Quo at the time. He's a really good guy. And they basically both drummed together. And Jeff was just a kind of there to help Rick along and see how it went. But it came to the big gig, and there was this lovely kind of moment where Jeff Rich just looked at Rick and said, look, man, you're ready. You're ready to go. You can do this, you know. And I think then Donington was that gig, though I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah, I can't remember if it was Donington, but Jeff Rich was in Germany with Status Quo.
Right.
And his plane had been delayed. And so it looked like he wasn't going to make it to the gig. And there was a brief conversation along the lines of, do we do it without Jeff?
Right.
And Leopard are always, always up for it. And they were like, no, we'll do it. We're just going to go for it.
Yeah.
And I can't remember now whether Jeff Rich turned up in time or if he turned up halfway through.
See, that's now triggering my memory. I think you're right. I think he turned up about halfway through.
And Rick was already doing his thing.
Yeah.
And Rich got there and he was like, all right, yeah. And Jeff was like, you got this.
Yeah.
Because I think he'd been listening in the car.
Something like that.
Or as he's making his way on his hands and knees through the
VIP,
like the rest of us, through
past
the VIP.
Mick Wall.
Crawled right over me.
Yeah.
Him with his two arms, climbed right over me and his drumsticks,
Yeah.
in his nostrils, climbed straight over me. And, So, a lot to do with grunge so far.
And one day we should definitely talk about Leopard and Rick Allen, because that's such a brilliant story and such a brilliant comeback, isn't it? I mean, it's an amazing thing that now you don't even think about it when you see Def Leppard. You don't even think about it.
No, it's a bit... I was the first person to ever interview Rick after...
Were you?
After he came back, yeah. And can you hear the pug?
The pug.
Can we hear the pug? Yeah. That's not me snoring, that's Coco.
That's the heavy metal pug.
The heavy metal pug.
Impersonating the time.
And he was showing me, it was really funny because he was showing me the kit, but he was almost prouder of the fact that he was showing me he'd learned to roll a cigarette with one hand. To him, that was like, I got this. I'm cool. Yeah, drums. Yeah, whatever. Look at this. It was pretty impressive, I have to say.
Yeah.
So anyway, grunge. Now we'll take turns here, but let me, if it's okay with you,
You're going to set it up.
I'm going to set it up because I had two kind of pre-grunge. Well, like when you have a big earthquake, there's sometimes pre-tremors. Not if they're premature, but they're sort of
tremor. That's what they should call them. That's good, a tremor.
A tremor. There you go. Yeah, no,
that's a geological term, people.
That I just invented.
The tremor. If you feel a tremor, get out.
Yeah, copyright.
Yeah.
PayPal. So I'm in LA, as I was in those days, and two things happened almost simultaneously. I was literally by the pool at the Sunset Marquee when a record company lady, whose name I can't remember, from I think CBS, or maybe Sony had taken over then, but anyway, CBS, and she hands me a cassette, and because I was known as like the Guns N' Roses guy, that sort of guy, she was like, "You're going to love this." Because I think this band are going to be like bigger than Guns N' Roses.
Yeah, to which you just laughed.
To which I just took that
through the tape and
in the pool, in the pool,
both of them in the pool for ridiculousness,
for outrageous proclamations.
Bigger than Axl Rose.
Yeah,
give me a break.
Yeah, fuck you, I said. Get out of the ring, I said.
Come in here with your crappy tape.
So I looked at it, and it was by a group called Mother Love Bone.
Oh.
And I was like, in those days, honestly, I couldn't walk. I'm sure it was the same for you in those days. You couldn't walk anywhere without someone giving you a cassette. I remember Zodiac Mind Warp when he was still Mark Manning.
God loves a trier.
He and I had worked together on a sort of a pre-Kerrang, or about the same time Kerrang was first starting, a magazine called Metal Fury. And it was a heavy metal magazine that you unfolded into a giant poster.
Oh, right. Yeah. Because he was a designer, was he? Or
He was a designer, and he was Mark, and I was Mick.
Yeah.
But I used to write under the name of Frank Fury. And he used to design...
It's a good Irish... No, you sound like you're in an Irish folk band. The Furies. The Furies.
Iron Maiden!
The Furies with Frank Fury.
He was in the Furies, and then he went solo as Frank Fury and the Furies. Yeah. A bit like Ronnie James Dio, or a bit like Dio featuring
Ronnie James
Dio. It was the Furies featuring Frank Fury and future Zodiac Minded. I bumped into him. This is now cut to 2 years later or whatever. I bumped into him outside the offices of Kerrang when we were still in Covent Garden.
Yeah.
And hello, Mark. What are you up to? He said, I'm starting a band. I was like,
just the words to fill you with joy.
Oh, yeah, immediately
That's what you
I'm
always want to hear. One of your mates has started a band.
Is that the time?
Yeah.
And I've got a cassette. I'm like,
no. Yeah, of course you have.
So he gave me a cassette, and I think it just went in the drawer with all the other fucking cassettes, never played it. I don't think I even had a cassette player. I didn't have nothing in those days. I didn't even have anywhere to live. So you're given cassettes all the time. And here I am now, a few years on from Zodiac's tape. I'm in LA, and also if I did a thing on a group, they would pay for another 2 or 3 nights at the hotel. So I'm like, I'll give it a spin. Yeah. Left it, ignored it, and then about a week later found it and played it.
You had the nights by this time.
Did I have the what?
You had the 3 nights by this time.
Oh, I'd probably turned it into a couple of weeks, and then you've got to fly me to Seattle
I haven't listened to it yet.
Class.
If you could just pay for the next few days. I haven't listened to it yet, but I'll listen to it soon.
I was doing a kind of a greatest hits Mick Wall thing about 10 years ago, and I was going through all these old issues of Kerrang, and it was better than a diary.
Yeah.
Because there were things in there I have no memory of. There was one big feature I did on Femme Fatale. Do you remember them?
Oh, God, Lorraine Lewis, yeah.
I was trying to think of her name, Lorraine Lewis. And here it is, this huge feature with me interviewing Lorraine Lewis saying how, what were they called?
Femme Fatale.
Femme Fatale, how big they were going to be.
See, a classic example there.
And I remember I did that having lunch at the Sunset Marquee because her label had just given me another 3 nights and paid for lunch.
Yeah, so she just send her around, I'll do it now.
Zero recollection of writing it, ever hearing any music.
Yeah.
I can't really remember what she looks like. Fair hair, I think.
Yeah, sort of blonde hair. She was kind of like very, I would say very American looking. That kind of...
A blonde-haired woman in LA.
Blonde-haired, but
weird.
If I say what I'm going to say, I'll get cancelled. So I'm not going to say it.
No, don't say that. I know you retain these very sexist, old school.
It's not. I'm just groping for a good description.
Sorry. What were you doing?
No. Oh, please.
Really, Harvey?
We're talking about grunge.
Really?
It have moved on. Times have moved on.
So I listened to Mother Love Bone.
Yeah.
Do you know what? It's coming back to me now. I think it's like a month or 2 later. I'm listening.
You stayed for a month. They paid for a month.
By then, I was living there pretty much all the time. I would stay at people's places, and so it's literally a couple of months later, and I'm listening to this, thinking this is pretty fucking good.
This
actually
good.
Is kind of in the Guns N' Roses orbit.
It was kind of, I mean, I don't want to jump in ahead of the story.
Of course not, no, because that's not your style.
No, I was just going to say, what it had was those roots of, Mark Bolan, T-Rex,
Queen,
as well, Queen.
Elton, all the same influences that Axl had.
Yeah, absolutely.
In a guy that was probably about the same age, I think.
Yeah.
I think Andrew Wood, the singer and main songwriter in Mother Love Bone, I think was about the same age as Axl.
He would have been young at that time.
So I think, this is actually really fucking good. Yeah. So I ring up the record company, go, that tape? I would like, and she went, it's too late. The guy died.
Yeah, wow.
And I was like, oh, okay, cassette out the window.
Yeah.
Oh, well, never mind. Femme Fatale are coming round later. I'll get my 3 nights out of them. So, I was like, oh, wow, that's such a shame, and then literally forgot about it. Literally same time. So this is 1990?
Yeah.
89 going, I think like
It
early
was 89.
90.
He died in 89, didn't he?
Was it
Andrew Wood.
89 he died?
I think it was. Well, I'm not.
Or maybe he died and I think he died and they put the album out.
What happened was the album was slated for, I think it was sort of like July, something like that. I'm just guessing slightly now, but it was early summer, and he died literally, I think, a week or so before it was due to come out.
Right. And what I had was one of
So
those
you had
pre-release cassettes.
So I think they then held it back for not more than sort of a couple of months. It was 2 or 3 months, and then it came out. Okay. So you're talking about that intervening period over the summer.
Well, like I said,
whether it was 89 or whether it was 90.
I can't remember if I rang her 2 months later or 2 weeks later, but
Yeah.
it was definitely after the fact.
Yeah.
But I was so taken with it, I thought, my God, this is... Because at that time, everybody... there was Love, Hate, Burning Tree...
Yeah.
The Black Crows were another new group I was just
Were
writing about.
you throwing Love, Hate in with those?
Well, no, what I mean is in LA at that moment, there was a whole crop of new bands. Remember the Sea Hags?
Oh, I do remember the
Sea
Sea
Hags, man.
Signed with a real flourish,
And do you remember Circus of Power?
I do. Well, it's all those bands. Because I suppose what was happening, and you were absolutely right, was this transition period. And Mother Love Bone, as I'm sure you'll go on and say, became the kind of trigger for this whole moment of change. But so you had the sort of old school record company guys were still signing up the last of the kind of hair metal bands who were in LA, whereas up the coast, a few hundred miles, they were signing up the bands that had sprung up in around Mother Love Bone. Yeah.
Well, Mother Love Bone were the only one to get a major deal. The ones that we now would come to know quite quickly, Nirvana, Soundgarden, etc., originally on Sub Pop, which was just a bloke with a corner store, doing little deals. The point I guess I'm grasping towards was there was a moment where it wasn't called grunge. We hadn't arrived at that quite yet, but there definitely was an emerging kind of generation of bands that for me were more interesting than the Bon Jovi, Motley Crue era, because they kind of had all that sexiness going for them, but I thought they had better songs and it was more meaningful than Kickstart My Heart. I just overdosed and now I'm back. Girls.
What was Love, Hate on about?
Blackout in a red room.
Blackout in the red room.
Well, my favourite. Why do you take that cotton dough?
That was a good one. And what was the? Who was the? Were the Sea Hags that heave hard, she comes easy? Was that them? Was that the Sea Hags?
I don't actually recall any of their music, but I remember it being. They were very kind of...
They were a thing.
You like Guns N' Roses.
If you like Guns N' Roses,
you'll like this.
You're going to love these other 200 bands.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, but I remember very much thinking there was also... what were they called? I can't remember what they were called. Masters of Reality.
They were quite
Trouble. There was a group called Trouble who were very, very good. There just seemed to be this moment where there were these groups coming that were rock bands, but with just that kind of little extra that the 70s rock bands
One other name I'd want to throw in there, which I think was influential on the grunge sound, was King's X.
Oh, yeah. Well, there you go.
And that was out around that time. So it was out. Silent Planet was maybe 88, was it?
87, 88. 88, early 88.
Yeah.
I'm very pleased to say I was the first person to
Well, I remember that
bring
story.
them
It was
to the
a
world.
cover story of Kerrang! And at the time it was, who are these people? We've never heard of them. And they're on the cover of Kerrang! It was in Houston, wasn't it?
It was in absolutely.
Or Houston,
but
as we say in England.
but those were the days when
Houston.
Kerrang would put a group on the cover because we thought they were
They
cool,
were cool, yeah.
or they made us laugh,
Yeah.
or we just liked the album.
Yeah, that's why I put Love Hate on the cover.
Literally about 3 years later, when EMAP bought the magazine, you had to justify who was on the cover and what was their demographic. Were they big enough?
Who gives a shit?
Can you imagine going, we're putting Chainsaw Massacre on the cover of this. But how many have they sold and what's the demo? We don't fucking know. They make us laugh.
I remember, the moment that I realised EMAP had hit rock bottom, right? It was in a kind of bit of a down era for Kerrang, but we got this story. and it was the Count Grisnacht going around Norway burning down churches, right? There's no
wooden staves.
There's no more heavy metal story than medieval churches being burnt down by a lunatic in corpse paint.
Count Grisnacht.
So we did this cover. We actually got somehow. I remember we were getting all the papers translated from Norwegian because this is pre sort of internet. It was quite difficult to do. Piecing together this story. I think Jason Arnott did it in the end. Piecing together this story, and we got the photographs of the churches burning. We actually got the photograph and put it on the cover of Kerrang with a cutout of Count Grisnacht. And it was brilliant. It was just like, the churches are burning. It's perfect. And Tom Maloney, who was the MD or whatever he was, VMAP, sent a note back saying, "This is the worst cover of any magazine I've ever seen." And I just thought, there's someone who just does not know their product.
There's a guy that doesn't get it.
Yeah, just don't get. You just do not
doesn't
get
it.
Yeah.
So you could walk into any prison in the country, and there'd be guys that get it. But he was a guy that didn't get it.
He didn't get it. He just didn't get. And Mark Ellen and all those people who knew nothing. They just didn't understand heavy metal. They
didn't get it.
They didn't get it. They're too on about Pulp and people like that. Idiots, idiots.
Fuck those guys.
Fuck those guys.
Fuck those guys.
I'd rather listen to grunge 100 times over.
So, as this is going on with Mother Love Bone, as I feel I've missed the boat on the new Guns N' Roses, I'm also working on the world's first heavy metal video magazine.
Oh, that sounds good. Video. There's a
hard and heavy.
Yes.
Hard,
which I very briefly worked on as well.
Oh, did you now?
Well,
that was clearly after my time.
I'll have to tell you the story of that.
No, you
first.
You can tell me that story in a minute.
I will.
So what am I talking about? Oh yeah, so Hard and Heavy, the two bosses, one in London and one in LA. And of course,
that was a brilliantly kind of 80s thing, wasn't it? Having a boss in London and a boss in LA. Yeah. That made you think, oh, this is going to be good.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I tell you what, they paid me a ridiculous amount of money every month.
See, let's just explain the concept. The concept was it would be like a magazine, but it was on a videotape. You bought it each week or month or whatever it was, each month. Put it into your brand new VCR, and there was Mick Wall. And I remember the first one, we'll never forget it, was at Ronnie James Dio's house, and it was brilliant.
A proud moment.
Yeah.
A proud moment. So we've done 2 or 3 of these, and now we're having a meeting in LA with the boss in LA. And at this point, he's now assembled a couple of sort of stringers, young guns. I don't know personally.
Why would you?
Who?
Why would you? I said.
Well, why would I? Exactly. I'm at an exalted level. See, I'm an exalted
level. Did Axl Rose know the people at the record company? No, of course he fucking didn't.
No. Or did he know these young contributors on? Did he write songs about them? No. Just the exalted ones.
Who did Axl write the songs about? That's
me.
That's
right. Right. So. You go around the table, ideas, what should we do? And there was one young guy, I can't remember his name, a good guy, but a young guy. And he started trying to sell us on the idea of getting a crew, camera and sound and someone to interview, whatever, up to Seattle.
Oh.
Immediately I'm going...
Go Seattle? I've never been there in my life.
I said, I've done Queensryche.
They were from Seattle. Heart were from Seattle, but they very quickly got themselves down somewhere warmer.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I'm like, Seattle, but I've done Queensryche. It
fucking rains all the time.
And he said, no. He said, no, there's a scene. There's a scene emerging in Seattle with groups like, and he would have reeled off Nirvana, Sound.
I'll tell you, he would have said, Tad.
Yeah, Tad.
Mudhoney.
That's what he would have said.
Those people, those guys.
Now, I've stopped listening.
Yeah.
He lost me at...
Didn't we all?
He lost me.
You lost me at Tad.
He lost me at
Emerging Scene. You had me at Sunset Marquee. You lost me at Tad.
And I'm thinking, what the fuck do we want to go to Seattle and interview a load of people that no one's ever heard of?
I've just been in Ronnie James Dio's castle, mate.
Yeah,
you don't do better than that. That's the sort of feature we're looking for.
Have you got an idea like that? Yeah, that's the question. But also, to be honest, it was a lifelong thing for me. Like when I was editor of Classic Rock, every month some fucking writer would say to me, "Oh, there's a brilliant new band. We must do something on them." And I'm like,
must
we? Give a fuck.
Yeah.
Brilliant new. The magazine's not called Brilliant New Bands. It's called Classic Rock. Unless this brilliant new band is called Led Zeppelin.
Yeah.
You know, or whatever, something that we've heard of. I don't care. No. I eventually conceded and let them have like 2 pages in the issue every month where they could write about some upcoming new band, who
subsequently we've never heard of.
Became 2 pages no one ever read, other than the bloke who wrote the article and the band in the article. So, emerging scene, and I'm like,
fuck off.
That, you know. So I think, I was the editor. So,
rightly so.
So, I remember basically saying, well, that's a fucking terrible idea. Why would you want to do that? It's ridiculous. Let's send a crew to New York and do Circus of Power or something like that. You know? And have you not heard of Love Hate?
Yeah, you come and see the Sea Hags tonight, man.
Dude, they're the Roxy, man.
Yeah.
So I think eventually he did persuade them to let him go up there and do something. Yeah. But by then, I'd buggered off.
Yeah.
And so, cut to Nirvana suddenly becoming really, really big. Now, if you remember that time, Nirvana's album came out roughly about the same time as the 2 Use Your Illusion albums.
Yes, they did. On the same label as well.
Same label. Yeah. They were out in September, and Nevermind came out in like October. And by January, Nevermind had just overtaken Michael Jackson at #1 in the US charts. And at that point, there was an enormous sea change in the American industry. And then, of course, that kind of spread. It had a ripple effect on us.
It did. The amazing thing was the speed of that change. Because as you say,
it was literally overnight.
Yeah. Probably was almost overnight. Well, the thing was, it's like, and it was symbolic as well. You had Guns N' Roses who just made these, I mean, they, were ridiculous kind of traditional rock style excessive albums. I'm going to write a
two double albums released on the same day. 2 double albums on the same
day. There's going to be a 20-minute piano ballad because that's Axl's favourite song. And you weren't even allowed in the room to listen to him play it. It was just.
Well, he slept in the studio, didn't he? Yeah. He slept on a camp bed for 9 months, doing the millionth vocal take of "Back Off, Bitch."
Yeah. Well, no, but it was either November Rain or one of those. It was like it became this thing. It was so intensely personal to Axl.
Well, November Rain, he'd been playing right when the band, before he even formed the band.
Yeah.
But terrible song, by the way. Can I just say, if he'd had a real friend...
The video's amazing.
No, the video's one of the worst videos I've ever seen.
Yeah, but in being one of the worst, automatically one of the best. With the girl who's getting married to with a cut-out wedding dress at the front, and Slash plays a celebratory guitar solo at the wedding.
With an unplugged guitar. No amplifier, but just a helicopter.
It's not meant, it's symbolic, man.
Oh, no, I got that. Yeah, it certainly was symbolic to me, I can tell you that. It certainly symbolised something in my mind.
Yeah.
But Estranged was a fantastic, huge Axl ballad. And that also had a terrible video where he's diving under the sea and off a battleship.
Yeah. So the essential news from Guns N' Roses at that point is we've gone nuts. We've gone mad. We've got too much money, too much power, and we've gone insane.
Estranged the video cost nearly $2 million to make. And November Rain was similar. Yeah. And then they made a bunch of videos they didn't even put out.
Yeah. So they're in this kind of insane period where they're uncontrollable. And
they're out of control.
It very, very soon spins out of control and it can't be handled.
And at this very moment, here comes this complete antithesis to that experience. 3 guys, because also they'd expanded the lineup. They had keyboards. Right. At a certain point, they bring in a horn section, female. Axl's got this specially constructed giant grand piano
like a motorbike,
like Harley
It's
Davidson.
Hilarious, yeah.
And he's got the pink heart-shaped sunglasses
and he'd only
the
play,
kilt
and
a kilt.
He'd only play in cities that began with N or something. He was a magnificent rock star at that point, an absolutely magnificent rock star.
He was.
Yeah.
But here now comes this total loser. Scruffy guy.
Yeah.
Hasn't even brushed his hair
Yeah.
his whole life. I mean, I told you I'm wearing my special grunge jumper.
Yeah, it's got it.
Which is full of holes.
It is. It's got a hole attractively enough right under the armpit. So you can, when he lifts up his arm, you can see.
I'm wearing a white shirt underneath so you can emphasises the holes.
Yeah, and then there's one on his arm and there's one on his stomach.
And two on the back.
Yeah, and there is a hole for his head, so we're looking at that as well.
And the arms.
Yeah, and the arms.
And here comes this fucking, who knows what he is, a homeless person.
Well, didn't he live
was
he living under a bridge or something?
Well, that was in the good times.
Yeah. That was when there was a bridge to live under.
Living under, you think that's bad?
Yeah.
You should see where I used to live.
Grunge is essentially the Four Yorkshiremen sketch brought to life, isn't it? It's like, you think that was bad.
He's got this moth-eaten cardigan that belonged to his mum.
He looks like Dennis the Menace.
He's got ill-fitting jeans.
Yeah, on his
his group.
He's a junkie, basically, isn't he?
Yeah,
he looks,
but he's not in a good way.
No, not in a kind of Nicky Six type way.
No, or
my
Slash.
heart's just been kick-started, and now a couple of chicks are helping me over the shock.
Absolutely, or Slash. I'm a complete, junkie.
Yeah.
But I do have a top hat and leather trousers.
Yeah.
And you can't see my eyes.
And hanging out of my back pocket is a royalty check for $66 million that I haven't bothered to put in the bank yet.
But no, this is like an actual junkie living under a bridge.
Like the kind of guy who comes up to you in the street and goes, have you got any something? You don't even listen.
Yeah. Or you'd be walking down Seattle, come out of a nice coffee shop.
Yeah.
And he'd be this kid
you're
going...
warm, you're nice and warm.
And you're feeling comfy.
Anorak. Yeah.
I don't know about an anorak. I think more of a cashmere...
Yeah, maybe something like that.
Cashmere.
Yeah.
I just like saying cashmere. You're wearing a cashmere.
Yeah.
Several cashmeres. And along comes this urchin from the gutter.
Yeah.
Going,
I'll
blow you for $1.
Yeah, he's just got up from under the bridge.
I'll blow you for $1, mister.
Yeah.
And you think about it, obviously, because,
Yeah,
but then you go, no. And then he's got a bass player that looks like fucking Lurch from the Addams Family.
7 feet tall.
Ugly motherfucker.
Yeah.
And what does he do? He just sort of jumps around. And then they've got a drummer who clearly has no future.
Everyone has a drummer. I mean, for fuck's sake, even the lowliest of bands have a drummer.
Yeah, exactly. He's nothing special. No, he's just a drummer.
Just a kid.
He's just a drummer. It's not like he has any future ahead of him at all.
Any talent whatsoever.
Zero.
He's a drummer.
Yeah. So they come out and I don't know if it was real or actually a brilliant move or all of those things, but when Nirvana came out with that video, and it really was the kind of opposite of that Guns N' Roses, we are in the biggest stadium in the world, we all turn up in our own limo for the show. Sorry, are we interrupting your busy phone schedule?
From when I read out the correction and clarification.
Oh, you were doing a bit of research,
I forgot to turn my phone off, so carry on.
I don't know what I was talking about now.
Cobain has come up to you, hustling for a blowjob.
I'll blow you for $1,
I'll blow you
mister.
for a review. And you said, I've done reviews for less than that.
I said, you'll blow me for a review. Get in line.
Yeah, get in line. Because when I crawled into Donington, Gary Moore was right there.
He was right there, blowing me.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. And Y&T, but I didn't even write about them. So... it comes along and it is a breath of fresh air.
It sort of is. I mean, it's my memory is probably slightly different to yours in that I had a vague awareness of Nirvana, but because they'd been in Sounds and I think Sounds and NME really liked them.
Yeah, they did, yeah. And John Peel.
Because they'd done a sort of sub-pop album or something dreadful. I'd probably listened to one song from it and thought, this is crap.
Well, I think NME and that were probably more behind Mudhoney.
Yeah, and they were, well, I'm taxing the old research banks here, but the guys, the Andrew Wood has died. The other sort of two main guys in Mother Love Bone were Stone Gossard and Jeff Ament.
Guitarist
and bassist. Both, again, rooted in classic rock, as you would want to call it. Jeff's an Iron Maiden fan, Stone's a Led Zeppelin fan. They're not kind of... Yeah, they liked punk or whatever, but they also liked this
classic rock. And they all had really long hair.
All had really long hair, and they played this kind of Queen-type stuff with Andrew Wood. Andrew Wood encouraged all of that. He called himself Andrew, didn't he? He had this sort of Mercury, Elton John-style persona.
He was the kind of guy that come on in white boots and makeup.
Exactly. Prior to that, Stone and Jeff had been in a band, I think, with Mark Arm, Green River. Which was an influential sort of underground punk band in Seattle. And Mark Arm was the purist, and Arm was the one who sort of slung Ament and Stone Gossard out because they liked Iron Maiden. You know, Mark Arm liked punk rock, and so he formed Mudhoney on the back of Green River, and Stone and Jeff formed Mother Love Bone. That's roughly as I remember it. So the Seattle scene at that, and then very soon after Andrew Wood had died, he'd been flatmates with Chris Cornell, hadn't he? And Soundgarden were already up and running by that point. They were probably about to sign a major deal, had signed a major deal.
I'm going to jump in
because you know it better than I do.
Soundgarden were like a mini Led Zeppelin. Mini-me Led Zeppelin.
I mean, great singer, Chris Cornell.
Fantastic singer, fantastic musicians.
Good guitarist, that guy you couldn't remember. Good guitarist.
Tim Thago.
That's
and
the guy.
If you go on YouTube right now and put Soundgarden Whiskey A Go-Go,
right,
there's a clip of them playing the Whiskey in like 88, 89.
Yeah.
They have all got really long hair and they are all doing this with it, flicking it like this. It is so metal. It's ridiculous. And if you listen to, was it Louder Than Love?
Yeah. Very Sabbath.
Well, I thought it was like Sabbath meets Zeppelin.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Which, if you're an American band, not from New York or LA, in fact from Seattle, Sabbath were massive in Seattle.
Yeah.
That whole northwest.
Yeah. Well, they were the one heavy metal band Cobain would acknowledge as an influence. Then maybe a Kiss, maybe, but
yeah, they all had. Everybody in America, Kiss was in there somewhere for everybody, wasn't it? But. So I guess we're still in this sort of transitioning thing. But
you were going to say that Cornell was friends with Andrew Wood and decided to do a tribute to He was in Europe. I think he was in Europe on tour, and he wrote a couple of songs that were about Andrew Wood and about his death. And when he returned from Europe, he got in touch with Gossard and Ament, who were kind of thinking, well, what do we do now? I think. You wrote a great story for Raw at the time, I remember, which reported on soon after Andrew Wood died, they had a memorial at one of the theatres in Seattle, the big one. I can't remember what it was called now, but it was full. So like a couple of thousand people there, and at the eulogy given by Andrew Wood's father, he essentially said to Stone and Jeff, "You should carry on, try and carry on."
Yeah.
So they were sort of trying to work out what to do. They'd hooked up with Mike McCready, another guitarist, another metal guitarist, who I think had been down in LA trying to make it with Duff McKagan.
Yeah.
Who was obviously another Seattle guy. And McKagan had coaxed Stone and Jeff back into doing some demos. At the same time that was happening, Cornell comes back from Europe and goes, "I've got these songs. Do you fancy trying to record them?" And all at about the same time, Eddie Vedder, who was down in San Diego, was that someone like that?
Yeah.
Gets to hear the demos that McCready, Ament and Gossard have done, and comes up to Seattle to do some recording with them. And Cornell turns up and says, "I've got these songs." And Eddie Vedder ends up singing on one of the songs that Cornell's got. And these two projects emerge at roughly the same time.
Hungry for Heaven, wasn't it?
Hungry for Heaven. Say Hello to Heaven, was it? Say Hello to Heaven, or something like that.
Yeah.
So these two projects emerge. One is Temple of the Dog, which is a line from a Mother Love Bone song,
Yeah.
which happens to be about that happens to be the name of this tribute that they do.
Right.
And then Pearl Jam, which was called Mookie Blaylock at first, which was the name of a basketball player, wasn't it? But they very quickly changed their name. And they did an album.
Was he a basketball player or was he a baseball player?
Baseball player, something like that. Yeah, I can't remember exactly what he was. But the name changes.
Junior squash champion.
Yeah, probably. Coits or something like that. Deck Coits.
I think it was baseball.
Yeah, something like that.
Probably
anyway,
wrong.
It doesn't matter.
No doubt we'll get comments.
We'll get comment accuracy. But
highlighting your lack of research.
But the thing in my mind that was going on is like this intense period of creativity. All of these things are happening at the same time, kind of separate from Cobain, although they would be lumped in. There's kind of a familial connection between Soundgarden, between Pearl Jam, Mother Love Bone, those kind of bands. They were the same guys in and out of the same bands.
Yeah.
Whereas Nirvana were probably more on the kind of Mudhoney side of things, the pure punk.
Well, Nirvana were from Aberdeen in Washington, so it wasn't strictly Seattle.
Yeah.
But it's like saying you're in Oxfordshire in England. You live in Oxford. Oh no, I live in Banbury.
Yeah,
You're in that Venn diagram.
Yeah.
But no, you're absolutely right. But here, that's a crucial thing you've landed at here, because here's my reading at this point is all of what you've said entirely accurate. Cobain did not move in those circles, but because here's the other thing about Seattle is they didn't have any music venues in the same way that New York had loads of clubs and bars. LA had Texas had loads of clubs and bars you could play in. Seattle didn't have any. And so what happened was for a really long time, these bands basically just rehearsed. Or they would invite friends over to the rehearsal studio and do a set for them. But they had a really long kind of incubation period where they got really good at their instruments, became better and better at the songs. Soundgarden, I think, at that point were the only ones that really had been around for a while. But as Nirvana starts to explode, suddenly Soundgarden, the very nascent Pearl Jam, Alice in Chains, all these other groups, start to maneuver their own positions musically and image-wise, more so in the coming years, but musically for sure, start to position themselves in that kind of Nirvana orbit.
Yeah.
So suddenly, instead of Soundgarden wanting to be the new Black Sabbath meets Led Zeppelin, they start to also manicure their sound and their songs to be more Nirvana than Guns N' Roses.
Yeah. And I think you're right, and I think the big twist between Mother Love Bone and Pearl Jam, I think if you played the Mother Love Bone album, Apple, and you played 10 instrumentally, you just played the instrumentals through without the vocals and without the lyrics, you'd think they sounded very similar. They would sound very similar.
Absolutely.
What the difference on 10 is the lyrical content and Eddie Vedder's voice being sort of slightly more doomy and less rock starry than Andrew Wood's. But all of a sudden you had this shift from, well, I don't know. I mean, Wood was sort of slightly druggy and stuff, but it was that kind of Mark Bolan type.
Yeah.
You know, stars in there. They had stars in their hair, and they were tripping, but that's because they were trippy and they were star children. Well, whereas Eddie Vedder was, here comes Jeremy with his fucking gun because he's pissed off, you know.
Well, Eddie was more a car mechanic, wasn't he? Where Landrew was like, I'm trying to think of a very flamboyant gay character in a comedy. He was that archetype. Makeup, hair, white boots.
Absolutely, yeah.
I'm not saying doesn't matter whether he was or he wasn't, but I don't think he was gay. Girls loved him.
Yeah, no, he had the girlfriend.
Painted fingernails.
Yeah, it was all of that. Yeah, it was all of that. Was Eddie Vedder was never going to do that.
No,
you know, because
Eddie was far too repressed.
Yeah, it didn't chime with the times, and as you say, all of a sudden. So in my mind, being in the magazine office at the time, you were getting all of a sudden tape after tape, because the Pearl Jam album came out very quickly after Mother Love Bone. They didn't hang about making that record. Temple of the Dog came out, and then came out again after the Pearl Jam album, because A&M, who were the label who had Temple of the Dog, suddenly realised essentially what they had in this Temple of the Dog album was a supergroup.
Supergroup, yeah.
You know, they had the two huge... Soundgarden put out
Bad
Motorfinger, which became a big album, and 10 came out, was a big album. So all of a sudden, Temple of the Dog comes back out, gets to about number 5 in the Billboard chart or something. It's a huge album. Yeah. Cameron Crowe comes along, another sort of Seattle-connected guy, married to Nancy Wilson from Heart, makes the film Singles, which is a kind of, you know, coming-of-age comedy, but about Seattle. There's a band in it, and the band in the film are played by Pearl Jam. So all of a sudden there's this cultural movement going on, which really didn't take very long. I mean, I bet if you measured the gap between Use Your Illusion, Axl going completely nuts, putting on the kilt and playing the piano with a, you know, made to look like a motorbike, and Singles coming out, it was probably no more than a year, 18 months.
A lot of those bands, Guns N' Roses included, but also Def Leppard, had this, you know, Appetite for Destruction and Hysteria both came out in 87. Hysteria was a really big hit fairly quickly, but a big hit, 10 million sales. Yeah. Appetite took a year to get that kind of momentum. But they both then Def Leppard took another 5 years to bring out an album, and Guns N' Roses took another 4 years. And put out 2 double albums at once. But if Guns N' Roses had put that
Don't forget the mini album. Didn't they do a mini album?
GNR Lives.
GNR Lives, that was great. Was that the one with the Charles Manson song on it?
No, that was Spaghetti.
Oh, that was the Spaghetti.
Yeah.
Spaghetti.
The bonus track.
The bonus
that he didn't even tell the rest of the band about, because he knew they'd be so pissed off. He just did it.
I mean, imagine that. And then they ended up having to give the royalties away, didn't they, or something, because they were going to go to Manson.
You're not suggesting Axl didn't think it through. Surely. Anyway.
Look at your game, girl.
So, but here's I think the other aspect of this is, because you've only got to Google or just know this story anyway to know, okay, so Nirvana hit, and in their trail comes Soundgarden, Pearl Jam, Alice in Chains, Courtney Love and Hole, L7, you know, that and all the other bands that didn't really make it big. And as you say, the movie, the fashion, it all escalated extremely quickly.
Well, I think what was key. Sorry, just to interrupt really briefly on that one. What was key was the place itself. It was very easy to coin this movement. I mean, before grunge came along, you could just say it's Seattle, and everyone knew what you meant as soon as you said that.
Yeah,
and I think that was quite key. In the same way with hair metal, you could say LA, and everyone knew what you meant by that.
Absolutely, but LA hair metal didn't do like a cuckoo that lays an egg that's twice the size of all the other eggs in the nest. Yeah. Seattle was a cuckoo, in the sense that not only did this incredible scene arrive oven ready, as it were, it killed what came before.
Almost overnight as well, yeah.
And here is an overnight story, because I think we should talk about all the groups that it killed.
Yeah.
Thunder.
Right.
A wonderful British band who had their first breakthrough hit in the UK in 1990. Are loved by every group. You know, they did shows with Heart loved them. They did shows with Aerosmith. I remember Steven Tyler asking me, "What's this group, man? Thunder, they're great." You know, Axl Rose loved Thunder so much, he went to his own label, Geffen, John Kolodner, and told Kolodner he had to sign them, because they were signed to EMI in the UK, which meant they had a kind of reciprocal deal with Capitol in America. But they told me they did one showcase for Capitol in America, and the head of the company came along and told them after the gig how much he loved the show and was looking forward to working with them. And then literally went out with their manager at the time and said, "This is the worst group I've ever seen. I don't like this music. I'm not doing anything for this group. You may as well just forget it."
Yeah.
So they thought their American career was over. Along comes Axl Rose.
Right. Yeah.
Resuscitates their career via John Kolodner and Geffen. So obviously the album Backstreet Symphony comes out about a year later in America. But the single Dirty Love was one of the most played on MTV. They did a video in England, but Kolodner got rid of all that and did brand new ones in America, which amazingly for the time featured lots of beautiful women, all dressed in cocktail dresses, dancing to Thunder, doing Dirty Love.
Which Thunder would have hated.
No, take those hired models out. 50 of them?
Yeah.
Blow me?
Yeah.
No. So Dirty Love sells about 400,000 copies. Wow. The album goes on to sell, again, about the same. And they get American management in your very good old friend Larry Mazer.
Larry Mazer, good man.
Who managed Cinderella.
He did a fine job managing
Did a fine job. And they're signed to Geffen, John Kolodner. It's all going off. Axl loves them. And a tour is arranged, and it's going to be David Lee Roth as headliner.
Yeah.
Thunder as openers. And this is 1992.
Right.
And it's arenas. I think it was it was like David Lee Roth, Someone, and Thunder. I can't remember who the other one was. Literally, Danny, the singer of Thunder, told me this recently. He said, the night before, he said, I was actually packing when we got a phone call from Larry Mazer saying, forget it. Everything has literally just changed overnight. American music radio programming, which was crucial in those days, have just swapped their formats to say no more rock and metal from those sort of 80s type bands. It's all grunge all the time.
Wow, yeah.
And so they long story short, they ended up doing some shows in Canada on their own. And just because they were over there and they were very enterprising, they kind of worked their way down the West Coast, show here, show there. No backing, no promotion. Oh, that's that would be a phone.
That would be Larry.
If you liked this episode, be sure to leave us a review, share it with a friend, or plain old subscribe wherever you happen to listen to it. For full episode show notes, visit nofilter.media/Getcha Rocks Off.
This has been a No Filter Media production.
Say what you want.